Detailed information is now available regarding the 4.9 million PPP loans made to businesses over the last 3 months. The Treasury Department and the U.S. Small Business Administration released the data for Paycheck protection loans totaling $521 billion.
The Treasury Department and the U.S. Small Business Administration revealed detailed data about the recipients of loans under the Paycheck Protection Program. As of June 30th, almost 4.9 million loans were made to businesses across the U.S. during the CCP virus crisis, with over $520 billion lent. The overall average loan size was approximately $107,000, but over two-thirds of all loans were for $50,000 and under, and loans of over $1 million accounted for less than 2% of those given out. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said the PPP is providing much-needed relief to millions of American small businesses, supporting more than 51 million jobs and over 80% of all small business employees. He said the Treasury was particularly pleased that more than a quarter of the PPPs had been lent in low and moderate income communities. Likewise, 1/4 of all jobs supported were in urban or rural communities or hub zones, this accounting for 13 million jobs. SBA Administrator Jovita Carranza said the PPP had been a success for small businesses. The data released was broken down to include loan information such as zip codes, business types, and demographic data. It also included information on nonprofit organizations and names of lenders. The Paycheck Protection Program is part of the Coronavirus Relief CARES Act, passed by Congress with bipartisan support. It was signed into law by President Trump on March 27th.
The FBI is reporting a surge in fraudulent unemployment insurance claims. The Bureau says the complaints are related to the virus crisis and involve the use of stolen identities. We spoke with an identity theft expert to learn how you can protect yourself. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more.
The FBI is seeing a spike in unemployment insurance fraud during the virus crisis. Criminals are stealing people's identities and then applying for unemployment benefits in the victims' names. Protect Now CEO Robert Siciliano says criminals thrive on chaotic situations like a pandemic because there's a lot of stimulus money available.
Criminals generally shine when things are somewhat chaotic. For example, like around the holidays, people are shopping, whether they're online or at the stores, all that chaos, there's a lot more opportunity for fraud. People aren't paying as much attention. Same thing.
Siciliano says people need to pay close attention to their credit lines and unemployment accounts to make sure nothing has gone wrong. He says simple phone calls, emails, and pop-ups can be used to steal identities.
What everybody should do essentially is log into their own unemployment profile, making sure that you have access, change up the passcode so that nobody can function as you.
The FBI reports criminals are stealing identities using computer intrusions, cold calls, email phishing schemes, and stealing information from social media, as well as other methods. Siciliano says cybercriminals are highly organized, similar to professional businesses.
They have supervisors, they have managers and frontline employees. They have people that work in a physical office building throughout the day, and they have remote workers either locally or throughout the world. And this is a for-profit opportunity. Criminal hacking is a for-profit business.
Oftentimes, cybercriminals are operating overseas. For example, the Justice Department seized the property of 6 Nigerians for stealing $6 million from U.S. victims in online dating scams. Foreign states have even engaged in organized cybercrime, like when Chinese military-backed hackers breached the credit company Equifax in 2017. According to the Assistant Attorney General, Chinese cyber actors tried to steal a virus vaccine from the U.S. in April.
It used to say that, those who dominated the seas dominated war, and then those who dominated the skies dominated war. Now it's those who dominate cyberspace.
The FBI says to check your bank accounts regularly and keep a lookout for letters about unemployment insurance if you have not applied for it. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
There were no surprises at the winners of the New Jersey and Delaware's presidential primaries yesterday. New Jersey also held its congressional primaries. Let's take a look at the results.
Former schoolteacher Amy Kennedy won a Democrat primary in New Jersey's 2nd District. Kennedy is married to former Congressman Patrick Kennedy from the political dynasty. She will face off against U.S. Representative Jeff Van Drew. He switched parties last year to become a Republican in the November election and pledged his support to the president. He beat a challenger in the Republican primary. Van Drew had won the district as a Democrat in 2018, but he left the party a year later after voting against impeaching President Trump in the House of Representatives. And Representative Chris Smith easily won the Republican primary for New Jersey's 4th district. Smith won with 95% of the vote. Smith hasn't faced serious primary opposition for nearly a decade, winning over 80% of the Republican vote in the past 4 primaries. For a while, Smith was the only Republican representative from New Jersey until Representative Jeff Van Drew switched parties. And Senator Cory Booker won New Jersey's Democrat Senate primary against Black community activist Lawrence Ham. Booker arrived in the Senate in 2013 after serving as a mayor of Newark. Booker ran for president in 2020, ending his campaign in January. New Jersey and Delaware also cast ballots in presidential primaries. Former Vice President Joe Biden won the Democrat presidential primary in both states. President Trump won Delaware's Republican primary. He was uncontested in New Jersey.
As Florida sees a resurgence in virus cases, a number of measures are being considered for the Republican National Convention next month. It's expected that participants attending the conference will be tested daily for the virus.
The Republican National Convention is introducing measures for attendees to guard against the CCP virus. A Republican National Committee spokeswoman in a statement wrote, "The plan for administering testing and other health protocols will be rolled out in the coming weeks. We are committed to holding a safe event." The convention is scheduled for August 24th to August 27th. Portions of the convention will take place in Charlotte, North Carolina, while other parts will happen in Jacksonville, Florida. President Trump is scheduled to give a speech on the last day of the convention in Jacksonville. RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel told Fox News last week that all attendees would be tested. Other measures include temperature checks and sanitizing. The decision to move part of the convention from North Carolina to Florida was made before the state's recent spike in virus cases. More than 7,300 new cases were reported on Tuesday. 2 older GOP lawmakers, Senators Chuck Grassley and Lamar Alexander, aren't attending the RNC. Both are in their 80s. Grassley said the choice was due to the virus situation. Stephen Hahn, the Food and Drug Administration commissioner, told CNN over the weekend that it was still too early to see how the situation would progress and that they were waiting to see how this unfolds in Florida and elsewhere around the country.
The Trump administration has officially notified Congress and the United Nations. The U.S. is formally withdrawing from the World Health Organization.
Democratic Senator Robert Menendez tweeted Congress received the notification Tuesday. The withdrawal will go into effect next year. President Trump announced in May that he planned to withdraw from the WHO. The formal withdrawal came after the WHO admitted that officials of the Chinese Communist Party did not report the new virus to them when it first hit. The House Foreign Affairs Committee says the WHO enabled the CCP cover-up by failing to investigate and publicize reports conflicting with the official CCP, while at the same time praising the CCP's response.
The U.S. FBI director calls China the greatest threat to the United States' economic and national security, but he made it clear that he's not talking about Chinese people or Chinese Americans. The Chinese Communist Party is the threat.
From hacking corporations to get data to hacking health insurance companies and social media companies for personal info, the Chinese Communist Party appears to be taking steps to steal Americans' sensitive information. Right now, there are open investigations into this matter in all 56 of the FBI's field offices, and they open a new similar case about every 10 hours.
And over the past decade, we've seen economic espionage cases with a link to China increased by approximately 1,300%. The stakes could not be higher, and the potential economic harm to American businesses and the economy as a whole.
One of the regime's tactics to undermine America's economy is to bribe scientists to steal technology. They then use the stolen technology to put the American company, its inventor, out of business. That's what happened with the Texas-based scientist Shan Shi, and he's now in prison. He stole trade secrets regarding syntactic foam used in Navy submarines. Then the Chinese conspirators patented the stolen product and offered a joint venture to the American company they had stolen it from.
To put it bluntly, this means American taxpayers are effectively footing the bill for China's own technological development.
And the regime has lots of tactics to try and influence U.S. public servants like governors, Congress members, and senators. They try to persuade the officials' views on Chinese issues such as Hong Kong and Taiwan. Take the so-called fox hunt program, for example. The Chinese regime describes it as an international anti-corruption campaign. But Ray says that's a cover-up, and that it's actually a way for the CCP to target people who are deemed a threat to their power, such as anyone seeking to expose its human rights abuses. Hundreds of the regime's fox hunt targets are American citizens or green card holders.
For example, when it couldn't locate one fox hunt target, the Chinese government sent an emissary to visit the target's family here in the United States. The message they said to pass on? The target had two options: return to China promptly or commit suicide.
Ray says in the past, if people refused to go back to China, the regime would either threaten them or arrest their family members in China. Ray expressed that this doesn't mean we should stop doing business with China completely, but he says the U.S. will not tolerate the unlawful behavior. Melina Weisskopf, NDD News.
And the FBI director says there is much more to China's espionage than these examples, but he's also encouraged to see our foreign partners working together with the U.S. to combat the CCP's threat. Coming up, a wind energy developer is in the works of setting up over 100 wind turbines in rural New York, but it's opposed by the people who live there. And some top movie theaters are suing New Jersey's governor after he failed to set a reopening plan for them. That's as other gathering spaces begin to open their doors. Also, for manufacturers of a spray system, business is thriving. The enormous surge in demand caught the company off guard at first. Find out more after the break. They flew off the shelves when the pandemic first hit, and now they're official. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has given its first approval to disinfectants that kill the CCP virus. 2 Lysol products are federally approved as effective against the CCP virus. They are Lysol Disinfectant Spray and Lysol Disinfectant Max Cover Mist. The approval is based on lab testing that found when used on hard, non-porous surfaces, both products kill the virus 2 minutes after contact. Lysol says it's currently working on testing more disinfectant products. New York is allowing a wind energy developer to build over 100 wind turbines in rural areas, and it's meeting with opposition from those communities. NTD's Don Tran spoke with a consultant who says a solution for both parties will come with more dialogue.
Rural communities in 3 New York counties are locked in a prolonged dispute with clean energy developers. The state recently gave a wind power company the all-clear for a 340-megawatt wind farm in Allegheny, Cattaraugus, and Wyoming counties. But residents have concerns about its possible flaws and the health hazards it could bring. A public affairs agency CEO says these communities have limited access to information, and it's affecting the way they see the project.
When you can't get information, and all the information you see makes you fearful, you're going to oppose it. And I think that happens in so many things today.
The project includes over 100 wind turbines spread over 30,000 acres in western New York. Davies says the two sides have not been in communication enough, and it's causing problems.
And you have no idea what it's going to be like. They haven't reached out to you. They haven't taken your ideas. Like, well, do they even care what I think? I live here. Who are these people? How can I trust them?
Davies' public affairs agency is working on bridging that gap, listening to the community to get a better understanding of their needs, then bringing the community together to talk with the energy developers.
And when they go out and meet with people, and people in the audience are worried about things, and they hear what they're worried about, they're like, oh, we can fix that. You don't want it over there. You're worried about that road. We can fix that. There's things that can be fixed, but you can't fix things unless you're having a conversation. And you can't have a conversation unless you reach out and talk to people.
Davies says rural communities, energy developers, and society as a whole can find a shared solution, and it starts with listening. Don Tran, NTD News, New York.
The nation's top movie theaters sued New Jersey's governor this week. They claim keeping cinemas closed because of the virus is unconstitutional because other places of assembly are allowed to reopen.
The nation's biggest movie theater chains, including AMC, Regal, and Cinemark, sued New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy for refusing to let them reopen. The lawsuit said Murphy already allowed similar places of assembly to reopen, such as churches, retailers, and indoor shopping malls, but he failed to set a timetable for theater reopenings. The lawsuit says it violates the theater's constitutional rights to free speech and due process. It's the first movie theater lawsuit resulting from the pandemic. The complaint admitted that the virus is a public health risk, and the theaters support fair and reasonable actions by the government to address that risk. But they say New Jersey's government-mandated total closure of movie theaters is neither fair nor reasonable. Fitness centers, gyms, and performing arts centers in New Jersey also remain closed. U.S. theater chains have laid off tens of thousands of workers since shutdowns began in mid-March. They've resorted to increased borrowing to stay solvent. Some have targeted July for large-scale reopenings, with plans to restrict attendance and boost cleaning.
COVID-19 has upended the U.S. economy, and businesses everywhere are struggling to survive. But there are some winners too. For example, this once niche business is thriving.
The CCP virus can be contracted from surfaces such as tables, counters, and other common areas. Goodway Technologies Corp. In Connecticut manufactures a sanitizing agent delivery system called BioSpray that is normally used in large industrial spaces. Now the pandemic has increased demand for the cleaning product and grown the company's client base.
So now the pendulum has swung, and the BioSpray system is being utilized in all sorts of non-traditional areas that we've sold into. So restaurants, doctor and dentist offices, retail stores, are all among the typical customers that we now are getting calls from.
Kane initially had problems sourcing the parts he needed to make his product when the pandemic struck in March. The company struggled to meet the growing demand. But in a matter of 4 weeks, Goodway was able to catch up, and business has been thriving ever since.
And just to give you an idea from a numbers perspective what that looked like, it was about 40 to 50 times this same month last year.
The rise of this industry is one example of a sector that's booming during a pandemic that has crippled so many parts of the economy. These products have become commonplace, creating a lasting impression on the American public. One enduring image of this crisis may be the foggers and spraying machines that are now being set loose on subways, airports, and sports arenas.
Up next, more disease in China. Officials confirm a case of bubonic plague in one Chinese city. The same day, a patient is diagnosed with dengue fever in another region. And 4 Epoch Times distribution workers in Hong Kong were arrested by police on July 1st. Police threatened one of the workers with sending her to mainland China for live organ harvesting. That and more after the break.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interests, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a non-partisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
This season, take an incredible journey through 5,000 years of culture with Shen Yun. Discover why people are calling Shen Yun a visual feast, a pleasure to the ear, an epic tale, a must-see. Shen Yun, an all-new production every year.
Now to China, where residents face more than just the CCP virus. Officials have confirmed a case of bubonic plague in an urban center. The same day, a patient is diagnosed with dengue fever in another region. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
Now to China's virus situation, but this time we're not talking about the CCP virus. Instead, the spotlight is on the bubonic plague and dengue fever. The case of bubonic plague has been officially diagnosed by doctors in a Chinese city. It's located in China's Inner Mongolia region, about 600 miles north of Beijing. On Saturday, one hospital inside the city alerted authorities about the suspected case. A day later, local authorities issued a citywide Level 3 warning for plague prevention, the second lowest in a 4-tiered system. The World Health Organization said that China's bubonic plague outbreak is being well managed and is not considered high risk. According to China state-run media, at least 5 cases of bubonic plague emerged in China last year. The bubonic plague is highly infectious and often fatal. This disease is spread mostly by rodents.
A peculiar traffic accident has left over 20 dead and more injured in China's Guizhou province, where a bus driving along a busy roadway abruptly raced through lanes of traffic, crashed through a fence, and plunged into the lake below. NTD's Juliet Song has more.
A bus in China's southwestern Guizhou province has crashed into a reservoir. Authorities say 21 people were killed and another 16 were injured. The cause of the accident is still unclear, but surveillance video shows the bus slowing down on the road before suddenly turning left and smashing through a fence. More clips later emerged online, showing the damaged guardrail and people in the water. A man can be heard in the background calling an emergency hotline.
A bus fell into the river here at Hongshan Lake just a minute ago.
State media reported that some of the bus's passengers were students scheduled to take the National College entrance exam. Other videos circulating online show people attempting to resuscitate a young girl. Later, what appears to be a notice from local government officials emerged online. It asked workers to not spread information about the incident and only follow the official narrative. Juliet Song, NTD News.
A Hong Kong police officer threatened to send a distributor for the local newspaper The Epoch Times to China to have their organs harvested alive. The worker was arrested while handing out promotional material during a recent protest.
On July 1st, thousands of Hong Kongers poured onto the streets in protest of the draconian national security law imposed by Beijing. The police arrested over 300 people in the Causeway Bay, including 4 distribution personnel of the Epoch Times Hong Kong edition. The Epoch Times extensively covers Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests and Beijing's erosion of the city's freedom. One of the 4 arrested said she often distributed posters and promotional materials during protests, and the police never intervened, but this time was different.
Suddenly, the police came. They blocked the road on both sides and didn't let me leave. I didn't know what was happening. I thought maybe they would just check something and then would let me go. But I waited for a long time, and eventually they brought me to the police station. That's when I knew I was arrested.
Chen said she did nothing wrong and refused to wear the prison uniform during police detention, but was verbally abused by police for that.
A female police officer tried to put the prison uniform over my head 3 times. I said I'm not wearing it. She didn't force me. But behind me there was a male police officer who said, "You don't sign your names, nor do you wear the clothes. Then how about we send you to mainland China and have your organs harvested alive?"
Forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience has been practiced.
Last year, an independent People's Tribunal in London found that the Chinese regime has and continues to harvest the organs from prisoners of conscience. The tribunal said that one source of organs, and probably the main source, were adherents of the persecuted spiritual group Falun Gong.
My tears ran down at this moment. I asked him loudly, "How many people have you sent back to the mainland for organ harvesting? How many times have you been involved in this? Have you done it before? If you did, admit it. Don't wear the mask. I will recognize you and I will let the world know that you have done something like this. Do you all agree with forced organ harvesting? It's such an evil deed." Yet no police answered my question. There were a swarm of police there, all dressed in black. Yet they were all silent.
Another of the newspaper workers arrested was handing out promotional materials the day before at a metro station when a police officer warned her that this would be the last time she would be allowed to do this.
At the time, the police looked at me and said, "This is your last time." When I came back, I thought, from tomorrow, July 1st, will the police change their attitude to us, the Epoch Times distribution personnel? And it turned out they did change.
Despite the threats posed by the national security law, Zhang said she will continue to distribute the paper.
A lot of the Hong Kong media have been controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. The Hong Kong government is also controlled by the CCP. If people miss out on the voice from the other side and only receive the party's propaganda, the brainwashing will change them gradually, just like in the mainland.
The Hong Kong edition of the Epoch Times said they condemned the police for its indiscriminate arrests and the threats such actions pose to the city's press freedom and freedom of speech. In a statement, the Bureau vowed to continue reporting on the truth and defending Hong Kongers' rights to be informed. Sarah Liang and Penny Zhou, NTD News, Hong Kong.
Germany's interior minister says Chinese espionage is a serious concern in the country. It comes as a 74-year-old man and his wife are under investigation for espionage. NTD's Arian Pastar has the details.
Espionage has become a hot topic in Germany in recent months, with Berlin named a hotspot for spies. According to the German parliament's chair of the Intelligence Committee, almost every month an alleged Chinese spy is arrested in Berlin. The chief of Germany's domestic intelligence agency said at a recent parliament hearing that Berlin was already the city with the most spies for some time, and in his opinion, the country's spying problem is at its worst in decades.
My impression is Berlin has been the capital of spies for some time now. The level of espionage activities against German interests is at the same level as during the Cold War or even exceeds it in some areas.
Last week, Germany's interior minister confirmed that espionage, especially from China, is a serious issue. And he tied it to the Chinese Communist Party's One Belt, One Road, a global infrastructure and investment initiative to boost China's geopolitical influence. More than 60 countries have signed up to the initiative. He told a German newspaper, "We know that the Chinese are interested in our critical infrastructure." So to German officials, it is clear that Chinese spies are posing a threat. One unusual case is standing out from the crowd. In the last week of June, German public broadcaster ARD reported that a 74-year-old German man and his wife were being investigated for allegedly acting as double agents for Germany and China. The man, referred to as Dieter W., delivered intelligence from various countries to Germany's Foreign Intelligence Agency, BND, for almost 50 years. On one of his visits to China, Chinese Communist Party officials allegedly contacted him. They reportedly asked him to deliver sensitive information about Germany to China, but it is unclear if Chinese officials knew about the couple's connection to Germany's BND. According to ARD, he reported this to German officials, but still kept in contact with Chinese officials, which was unknown to his German superiors. Germany's intelligence chiefs agree that a stronger defense against the rising threat of espionage is needed. Reporting by Arian Pasdar, NTD News, Berlin.
Coming up, the U.S. awards $1.6 billion to a company developing a vaccine for the CCP virus. The goal is to have 100 million doses by early next year. And Deutsche Bank is fined for its ties to Jeffrey Epstein. It will pay New York banking regulator $150 million.
Hello there. Doesn't it feel like we're moving further away from the very values that our republic was built upon? And the media in our country has just been adding fuel to the flame, which is why you need to try the Epoch Times. It's pure, honest journalism that's restoring traditional values, and it reports the news with no spin, no hidden agendas, and no false narratives. So if you want to know the truth about the FISA abuse that took place during the 2016 election, or how socialist and communist ideologies have been infiltrating our society, or how the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up led to this global outbreak, and so much more, then you need to check out the Epoch Times. And for a limited time, you can try the paper yourself for a full month for just a single $1, and we'll send you a very special free gift. A giant timeline that's 3 feet by 4 feet, documenting the FBI's abuse of FISA spy warrants. So go to readepoch.com and claim yours today.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
In China, something can be illegal, but still in common practice. For example, bribery, or intellectual property theft, or Uber.
Well, at the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people and counting. I'm a little freaked out that many people have seen my face.
Hey, have you heard of China Uncensored? It's starring me.
It's more and more obvious that China is having a major influence on the U.S.
Hey, have you heard of China Uncensored? 中国揭秘.
In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the only show on TV or the internet. It will be the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Have you heard of China Uncensored?
Yeah, I have.
You actually have? He's heard of China Uncensored.
I love China Uncensored.
The U.S. has awarded $1.6 billion to a company developing a vaccine for the CCP virus. Novavax's stock has since surged more than 30%.
The U.S. government has awarded Novavax $1.6 billion to fast-track a potential coronavirus vaccine in the United States, with the goal of delivering 100 million doses by the beginning of next year. The cash grant is the biggest handed out so far as part of Operation Warp Speed, the White House's effort to speed up the fight against COVID-19. The money will cover manufacturing, distributing, and testing of the hoped-for vaccine, including late-stage human clinical trials, which could begin as early as October. Novavax is just one of many biotech and drug companies using funding from the U.S. Regeneron announced Tuesday that it has signed a $450 million contract with the U.S. government, also under Operation Warp Speed, to make and supply a potential COVID-19 therapy, a double antibody cocktail that could both prevent and treat COVID-19. Regen-CoV-2, as it is called, is already undergoing clinical trials. If successful, the U.S. will have exclusive rights to the potential drug, which could see the first batch ready for use as early as the end of the summer.
According to media reports, Walmart is close to launching its membership program. It will compete with Amazon's Prime service. Recode says Walmart plans to launch its subscription service Walmart Plus this month. It says a $98 membership will get you the same-day delivery, discounts on fuel at Walmart's gas stations, and early access to product deals for a year. Walmart's shares rose nearly 4% after the news. And real estate data firm Corelogic expects home prices will soon start to fall. It predicts a 7% drop by the May 18. That would be the first annual decline since 2012. As we talked about earlier, the housing market surprised economists by rallying in the midst of the pandemic. Record low mortgage rates likely the cause. Home prices are up almost 5% in the past 12 months. But Corelogic expects high unemployment to dampen demand. It predicts prices will start declining by the end of summer, especially in the hard-hit metro areas. Deutsche Bank will pay a $150 million fine for its dealings with registered sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The bank said it made a critical mistake taking him on as a client.
New York regulators fined Deutsche Bank $150 million for compliance lapses in its relationship with convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. The settlement is the first regulatory enforcement action against a bank for dealings related to Epstein. New York's Department of Financial Services gave new details about Epstein's financial movements in the years before his death. It showed how Deutsche Bank sought him out as a customer after his conviction for soliciting underage girls. And then the bank helped him process hundreds of transactions obviously implicated by his past. These included payments to alleged accomplices, lawyers, victims, Russian models, and women with Eastern European last names. Epstein was a Deutsche Bank client from August 2013 to December 2018 when the relationship ended, following additional negative press about his misconduct. The New York settlement reflected Deutsche Bank's cooperation over several years.
Coming up, Australian officials close to the border between the country's two most populous states. Border crossers face severe penalties as officials try to contain a virus outbreak. And Bulgaria continues plans to renovate a luxury hotel in Italy, despite the tourism slowdown. The company is confident tourism will return to normal levels in the future. That and more after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interests, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a non-partisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Australians wanting to enter the state of New South Wales from Victoria were forced to show permits allowing travel. Otherwise, they were turned around. Officials are scrambling to contain a virus outbreak.
No permit, no entry. At the drop of midnight Tuesday, Australia closed the border between its two most populous states. It's a step to try and contain a new spike in coronavirus cases in the city of Melbourne, the capital of Victoria. Early Wednesday, hundreds of police and army troops were out patrolling the border with New South Wales, where Sydney is located. If cars didn't have a permit allowing them to travel, they were turned back. It's the first time the border has been closed in 100 years. Previously, it was closed during the Spanish flu. Those in breach of the limits face fines worth more than $7,000 and up to 6 months in prison. Victoria reported nearly 200 new cases on Tuesday, the biggest one-day spike since April.
One retirement home in Belgium has found a way for residents to hug their loved ones again and stay safe in the process. A simple plastic curtain is now helping to curb the loneliness brought on by social distancing and quarantine.
Residents of one Belgian retirement home are finally able to soothe the pain of social distancing measures. Thanks to a new invention, dubbed the hug curtain, they can now embrace their loved ones again. Staff at the Jardins de Picardy nursing home near the French border installed the large plastic curtain. It immediately proved popular with residents who had not been allowed any visitors for 11 weeks amid virus concerns. Both visitors and residents were enthusiastic about the opportunity.
It's terribly emotional for me. And the first time I was able to hug my daughter again, I cried. But it was joy, not sadness. It was great. It's the most beautiful invention I've ever seen.
The curtain, decorated with flowers and bright colors, is made from a large plastic sheet. It has 2 pockets on each side where residents, visitors, or staff insert their arms.
It's great. I think it's a really good concept. And the fact of being able to be close again to your loved one, for me, it's my dad. It's really nice, physically and emotionally. It feels really good.
After each use, nurses carefully disinfect the curtain. The nursing home's director says everyone suffered from the lack of affection, but it was even worse for the home's residents.
Especially the residents, because I think that touching people is somehow very important. We know that it will still last for a while. We don't know where we are going with the virus. So it was obvious, it was imperative to be able to take residents in our arms, even if it is through a piece of plastic.
Belgium imposed its pandemic lockdown in mid-March, but has now started to relax restrictions. The disease has so far claimed almost 10,000 lives in Belgium. With a population of only 11 million, the country has one of the highest fatality rates per capita in the world.
The service and hospitality industries have been hit especially hard by the pandemic. However, in Rome, some are taking advantage of this time to invest in future projects.
COVID-19 is severely restricting travel for tourists, and the hospitality industry is struggling to stay afloat, particularly in popular destinations like Rome. But some in the business are trying to look past the pandemic and into the future. When the crisis hit, the luxury jewelry brand Bulgari was already renovating a 1930s building into a high-end hotel next to Emperor Augustus' mausoleum. The company decided to carry on with the project despite a crippled tourism industry in Italy where the virus hit particularly hard.
This city needs these kind of hotels to further blossom, and regain, the splendor it used to have. And second, because Roma, in 2 years down the road, will be visited again the same way it was in 2019.
Tourists spent about $95 billion in Italy in 2019. More than half came from foreign visitors. The hotel will have 100 exclusive rooms, mostly suites, a top-floor restaurant managed by a Michelin-starred chef, and a unique panoramic view of the city. The plan is to open in 2022 as scheduled. This expert says the plan makes financial sense. He says luxury services can be resilient in times of crisis, despite the uncertainty of travel restrictions.
I think that in the medium term, it's very important in tourism as well as in other industries to strengthen the positioning toward the high end of the market.
Bulgari also owns a chain of lavish hotels in Milan, London, Bali, Beijing, Shanghai, and Dubai. 3 more hotels will also open in Paris, Moscow, and Tokyo between 2021 and 2023.
It's possible for, all the players that will be in attendance.
He says he plans to donate his remaining season salary. Major League Soccer players are ready to return to play for the MLS's back tournament. The month-long event will be played at Disney World and without fans. All 26 MLS clubs were set to take part until FC Dallas were withdrawn after 10 players and a staff member tested positive for the virus. Nashville SC could be the next to withdraw after 5 players tested positive and 4 others require further testing. Earlier, the league lost one of its star attractions and reigning most valuable player when Los Angeles FC's forward Carlos Vela opted to stay home.
And that's all for now. Catch us again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Jasmina Davis.